Hello, everybody. This is Justin Beckler from Mobile Reach. I think there's still some people joining, so we're just probably going to hold off another minute or two just to make sure everybody gets in. But wanted to take a minute to thank Matt for inviting us to the Snapcast, giving us the opportunity to do a demo for everyone. Obviously, you guys can ask questions. It's going to be pretty technical, and really shouldn't take too long, just depending on the discussion. So again, feel free to interrupt me as we kind of go through the presentation or the demo. I did want to just do a quick introduction, but I'm just going to hold off here a minute or two because seems like there's still people joining. So, and if anybody had anything specific you wanted me, specific questions up front that you wanted to ask, feel free to ask away. All right, wait a few minutes. If people can join lit, we can follow back up with them. But essentially, I just wanted to start off by just introducing us as a company. For those that might not be familiar with us, we're based here in North Carolina, in the Raleigh or RTP area. You'll hear me reference my product or our product, which is the Splitware platform. And that's really what it is. It's a platform. We work with a lot of different systems, ServiceNow being one of them. And I'll talk a little bit about that when we go over the architecture here in a minute. But we've been doing this for a while. We started about 12 years ago, really mobilizing, DB2 applications to mobile devices before really a lot of the mobility market had even taken off. So we were doing this to iPACs, back in those days, and mobilizing patient data. And then we got into the IT service management space. That's really where we have that's our bread and butter. That's where we've spent the most of our time is implementing and extending IT service management, IT asset management applications to mobile devices. And, our client base, we have a pretty, Fortune 500, Fortune 100 client base, so we've been vetted out by a lot of the larger companies, and obviously the technology has been around for quite a while. And I'm just going to jump into the technology. And again, if you guys have questions I mentioned earlier, feel free to jump in and ask. The product architecture itself is pretty straightforward. There's three major components to the system. Starting on the left-hand side is we have a little middleware gateway component. And really this gateway allows us to connect to many different back-end systems. We do have the little connectors that we provide with our solution. We have some pre-built connectors. One is a SOAP connector for ServiceNow, and it really provides the connection into the back-end system, in this case ServiceNow. So we're connecting directly into ServiceNow via SOAP, common web services that ServiceNow provides, and really gets us access to the entire ServiceNow system, many of the objects in it, and allows us to build and extend any of those tables, ServiceNow tables, out to a mobile device. We also have some other connectors, like some direct database connectors. We have some connectors for other ITSM applications as well. And the gateway is really lightweight. We're actually looking at pushing this into the cloud as well, since a lot of the solutions we're integrating with started out more with an on-premise installation, but now most of them are moving out into the cloud, so we're going to look at pushing that out to the cloud as well. But today it's typically an on-premise installation, which in some cases works out pretty well because some of the ServiceNow instances are locked down to certain IP addresses. Like one of our early customers, they actually had that situation, so it needed to be installed in their environment anyways. But it's a very lightweight footprint. There's not a web server. There's not really a huge need for a high-powered server, because really its main purpose is to open up a real-time connection to the ServiceNow system. And then any other systems you might want to mobilize in your environment. We often get customers who start off with one application and then realize that, hey, I can use this to, mobilize my financial system for whatever reason, or some custom app that maybe they had built, a while ago and wanted to provide a mobile interface for. The second component is really the client itself, and this is a native application. That's what we focus on, is building native, very rich power user type applications for a variety of operating systems. So we support BlackBerry OS, and that's the pre-BlackBerry 10. We're working on our BlackBerry 10 client as well right now. Windows Mobile, which are typically your Motorola ruggedized barcode scanners. We actually have a Windows client that some of our, particularly DoD customers, use on netbooks and things like that. When they're out in the field where they don't have connectivity, they can do a lot of work offline. And then iOS, any iOS device and Android device. And really this client is an engine that once you download that engine, it allows you to very rapidly build little mobile sub-applications within it. So it's kind of like you download the base client, and then within it you can have multiple apps. And so that's what these boxes represent here, are the little really instruction files for building the mobile interface. And this is where all of the ServiceNow specific information is going to be stored. It's going to really focus on providing the bindings between the ServiceNow tables and fields and the mobile application itself. And then any client-side workflow that you might want to build outside of ServiceNow, mobility works differently, and so you might have to take some different things into account and do some things offline versus online, as well as any kind of UI elements. You can really get pretty complex with the types of workflows you can build, if-then statements, nested sort of workflows into the application. And the reason why that's important is when you're running some of these applications and you might not have connectivity, you want that workflow to still kick off. And then obviously when you push it into ServiceNow, any workflow that is written there will also kick off and run. But these applications are little files that are deployed over the air through our platform. So once you've built the application, it can be deployed within the platform. I'll talk about that in a second. But the way you build these apps are with our App Studio, and I'll show you an example, or I'll demo it for you here shortly. But the idea is that it's a drag and drop studio. It's not a development effort, but in the end you're building a very functional ServiceNow app, app that can communicate with ServiceNow. And the way it does that is just like our client does. It connects to the Splitware gateway, and it pulls schema, information from this, issuing SOAP messages, and downloads that schema information and presents it to the user, allows them to select which table they want to build an app against, drag and drop fields, and then again design their workflow. without even having to write any line of code. It's all sort of object-oriented, you know, sort of design-oriented, rather. It's probably a bad use of the term. So once you actually have built your application in the App Studio, then you take that file, you deploy it in a little deployment folder on the gateway, and then it becomes available to anyone with a Splitware client. Now you can obviously restrict down who gets access to the applications via ServiceNow permissions, usernames, things like that by, there's a configuration file that you can define who gets which application. So if you had, you know, an organization with multiple groups and you wanted to deploy out, you know, 3 applications to group A and a different set of 3 applications to group B, you could define that within our platform. And obviously security, being that we download a lot of information offline, you know, security is very important to us. We also do a lot of work in the DoD where that is obviously a requirement. So, you know, data at rest is encrypted with very high levels, you know, like 256-bit AES encryption. Any data in transit between the device and our gateway is encrypted with that same level. And then, you know, because we're connecting to ServiceNow via web service, you know, everything's going over HTTPS. So, you know, that's secure as well. So did anyone have any questions about the architecture or anything I glazed over that you might want me to drive in a little bit deeper? Okay.
This is Chris Stanke. Oh, I was just wondering about the way in which people log into your and I'm sorry if I'm saying this wrong, but the way they log into your mobile application and connect to ServiceNow is the, you know, when they're trying to update something or do something in ServiceNow, is it looking at their ServiceNow login and password information and validating that, or does the application itself have a kind of an aggregator that uses a different SOAP-enabled login and password?
Right. Yeah, great question. And I should have mentioned it. So the first part of your question is yes, it can. Basically, the user, when they log into the device, is going to enter a ServiceNow username and password. And sort of without any configuration, it just uses that username and password in the SOAP requests that are going across, all of them. So it's validating and requesting the data with their user credentials. Now, in some instances, you may not want that. You may not want to provide, you know, authentic, you know, user access to all the tables that the mobile app is actually accessing. So in those cases, we kind of have a sort of a 2-stage authentication where you can configure a service account at the gateway, and so all web service transactions would be configured to use that sort of service account, and then you would allow authentication or allow